Welcome everyone to another episode of my podcast, and hello if you're watching on YouTube. I don't know why I wave because I don't have nobody people watching this, not even live. Delighted, as you all know, I'm always delighted to have the wonderful Jon Selig. Jon Selig, yes, correct?
No, but that's okay.
It's okay. So I got it wrong. Great, straight start. Totally unscripted, as everybody knows. I came across Jon through the Salesborg's WhatsApp group. If you're not part of that, or if you know, you know. If you don't know, you know. You need to go and find the salesborgs.ai. Put your teeth back in. God, it's 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon in the UK. Jon really caught my attention, and I'll just shut up and let Jon talk, because he describes himself as half sales guy, half stand-up comic, or parental disappointment. I'm doing really well here, Alexander. I help sellers create punchlines that build pipeline. And I had a chat with Jon last week, a couple of weeks ago, and I love that his unique, truly unique story. Can anything be truly unique? You either are or you aren't. He's been there and done it, carried a bag, big organization such as Oracle, then moved into kind of stand-up comedy, but we're going to debate the word comedy and Jon's perception on that, and now helps sales leaders, sales organizations, sales teams understand, I guess, comedy, not comedy, the mechanics of comedy, into creating better content to generate pipeline and revenue. So I'll just shut up and let Jon take over and introduce himself. Jon, welcome.
Thank you so much. That was really well done. That was a good intro. I totally forgive the mispronunciation of my name, because it's actually the second most common. It's the most common mispronunciation of my name, and people have mangled it in so many more worse, horrid, and offensive ways that if someone says Selig, it's really no big deal. It's Selig, but Selig I get all the time, and I let it slide. I figured I just, you asked if you're pronouncing it correctly or not, and I said no, but I'm not. I hold no ill will towards you. But everything else was I give you an A instead of an A+ on that intro, strictly for the mispronunciation of the name, which is again a very common mistake you made. So thank you for having me.
I will take an A any day of the week. So, Jon, your story is genuinely a fascinating one. So you started out life in doing the hard yards in sales. Big organization, Oracle, you may have heard it, and then you made the move into being an independent sales and business development consultant, then comedy abroad, which I think is a really interesting story when we touched on that, and now you do what you do. So over to you. What's Jon Selig's story?
My story is I had, like so many competent sales professionals, I ended up doing it because I didn't know what the hell else I could do in life. And that small startup called Oracle offered me a role in 2002. And I figured I could be the resource this company needs to get to the next level. Dial by dial, as they were starting an SDR team for their business applications organization. And I realized quickly, this isn't the startup that I thought it was. And the term business development consultant isn't the strategic, high-level thinking role that they had led me to believe, but I still took the job because, again, I had worked at a couple of startups, one in the .com world, one startup consulting firm, kind of in the .com bust era. Yeah. Not a good time to be working at a .com, just as they're about to bust, or a consulting firm aimed at helping .coms. So, I was kind of floating a little bit astray. I don't know if that's the word. I was floating a little bit. Took a job at Oracle, and I remember when I walked into what turned out to be a group interview. I found this to be horribly offensive. I have an MBA. I'm wearing a suit. This is incredibly disrespectful that I'm part of this cattle call interview. And to add more insult to injury, we were all called into a room. And I'm already disgusted by the fact that this isn't a one-on-one interview that I'm having, that I'm not some special candidate. There's like 30 other people here to interview for this exact same job. And the woman who was the director of inside sales for Oracle Direct, as they called it back in the day, she literally said, "This is Oracle Direct. We are the telemarketing arm of Oracle." At that point, I almost stood up and walked right out. But this very wise little voice, or prudent voice in the back of my head said, "Just sit, don't make a scene, just follow through with this." Yeah. They had asked me actually to craft a presentation about something, about a business I was familiar with, and I worked on that. And I said, "Just you've taken the trouble, not only to create the presentation, but to drive to suburban Toronto, where I was living in downtown Toronto at the time. You've taken the time and braved these cars and traffic and construction to get here. Let's just go through with this. And they called a bunch of names for people who were going to interview with different managers. And my name wasn't called. I'm like, oh. And they said, if your name wasn't called, you're just going to go straight away and present. And I presented to the person who ended up becoming my manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, do you have any questions after I positioned a friend start a business? He said, I don't understand a word of what you just said, but you're going to fit in just fine around here. In his thick text, yeah, in his thick text and drawl, and I thought it was so funny. And I went through some interviews. They said, we'll let you know in a couple of weeks, but the next day they called me and they said, yeah, we'd like to extend an offer. My understanding by that point was that this is a cold calling role.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, this is late 2002. There was no, cold emailing as a strategy. It's just the phone, and that was it. And I just said, I can do this. Look, the money was good. It seemed like I had really clear objectives, which is a refreshing change from some of my past roles, which had, ultimately was part of the driver why I was seeking a new role. And I just decided this could be a good place. Oracle, it's a global organization. We all know some things about it, but at the same time, I will say Oracle really invests heavily in your development and your training. And it just seemed like a good spot for someone with a very good grasp of business operations across large organizations. And I started there. I hit my numbers and ended up moving into an inside sales role.
Mm-hmm.
And so after 2.5 years at Oracle, I knew that I don't know if I want to be part of this machine forever, but I still like selling Oracle. Yeah. I jumped to an Oracle partner here in my hometown of Montreal, and I helped grow that company from 8 people to 35 people. I did everything. I did full cycle sales, everything from cold calling to field sales. And then at a certain point, I was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. I just didn't really feel like talking to CFOs and CIOs about what ETL tools they're going to be using to extract, transform, and load data into their data warehouse. Like there was something about it that wasn't super like this isn't what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I was always a creative guy. And I started, I took a stand-up comedy class. I didn't even know it was a stand-up class. I thought it was a comedy writing class.
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe create some YouTube sketches or sketch comedy with some other people. And in short, the teacher, I guess we'll call him, he said, your final exam will be a 5-minute stand-up, 5 minutes of stand-up for your friends and family. And I said, I'm not doing that at all.
Brutal.
Correct. But after a few weeks of getting up on stage and doing the homework and going through the steps, 60% of the way through, I said, okay, I can do this final exam. And I did it. The only thing was I did not invite any of my friends or family because that would have felt awful inside. But I got laughs the first time and I was addicted. And from that point on, I just got addicted to stand-up. I was performing 3 to 5 weeks for the vast majority of 9 years until the global pandemic hit. I scaled back a little bit in the year before the pandemic, but performed at clubs and little festivals and all kinds of open mic and crappy bar shows and everything in between.
What sort of stand-up? Situational or kind of one-liners, or who would you compare yourself to in the comedy circuit that I might have heard of or I think may have heard of? I don't know.
I think that'd be really arrogant if I was to compare myself to anybody. I don't know. I always ask myself that question.
Yeah.
I did a mix of some short jokes, some one-liners. I had some stories. I had some observational stuff.
Yeah.
I had all 3 baked into one. I had some self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
I don't know if I compare to anybody, but I'm also not. I'm something you've seen and haven't all at once.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. And so what was I know we kind of touched on this before we kind of came, I always say this, we went live. It sounds like you and I were sitting in some posh green room somewhere in some big studio, and I'm sat here getting very hot and sweaty in my house in London because it's like 25 degrees and no air conditioning. That's 77 Fahrenheit for our US friends. Anybody else who doesn't know the degrees Celsius, which John just castigated me for because I completely forgot that, of course, Canada also operates on the Celsius side of things rather than the Fahrenheit side of things. So what led you to kind of join the two together in terms of like I've been there and done it, and the hard yards of I was back in the day. You would have been at Oracle, albeit in Canada, when I was recruiting sales professionals into the IT and tech sector. So you would have been the kind of candidate that I would try and fish from Oracle and probably flog to SAP for a little bit more money in the dream job. And it was just hardcore cold calling. That's all we could do. So been there, done it. Glengarry, Glen Ross. The first prize is you got your job. The second prize is whatever steak knives, and the other one is you're fired. So what points did you think I could then bring this? I could bring the experience of being there and done it and helping grow businesses, and then my experience of stand-up. I've never done stand-up before, but I understand full respect to anybody that's done that, because that is just, you're letting yourself out for the wolves, and there's no mercy from the audience. You're far worse than cold calling anybody to sell something they're not particularly interested in. So whether you kind of make that, I can bring that skill, if you will, and let's debate the word comedy, into helping sales reps be more effective at what they do in terms of outreach.
So I had this moment of realization when people said to me, John, it's so great that you're pursuing your passion. And I'd be like, to be clear, my passion isn't comedy. It's never selling software again, like that. So I just knew, like, from a certain point, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be working for people. And, well, let's face it. Let's call this out. When we sell technology that we didn't create, we are drinking Kool-Aid.
Yep.
And we are sometimes spewing it all over people. And I just kind of, it's a bit of a terrible analogy, but it's kind of true. I have this expression: most sales pros sell stuff they've never used to people whose jobs they've never had in industries they've never worked. And after a while, that just felt a little disingenuous to me personally. I just wanted to pursue some other things in life. And it's not to knock the profession, because I have a lot of respect for everyone who does it and people who do it with honesty and integrity. And I think if you can serve your clients in a way that's win-win, and you're making a great living and you're happy, God bless, right? But I also realized the first time I got on stage that there are people here with their arms folded, much the same way when I was in a boardroom with 6 middle-aged executives who had to meet with me because I was the third vendor on their list. Wow. They already knew who they're buying. And they're just like, they're all, whether it's the comedy crowd or whether it's the boardroom of decision makers, they're like, who is this guy? Like, why are we here? No one wants to be there, but you have like 6 to 12 seconds to get them to unfold their arms, which is the exact same length of time that we have to get someone who answers a cold call to open up to us and to accept us and to give us another, let's just say 10 to 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So messaging and crafting a message that is relevant to our audience and that triggers an emotional reaction, and that is memorable, is common to the two. It's a necessary thing in both roles. And the art of writing, one-liners or jokes, as I call them, not old-timey three members of interfaith groups walk into bars, not those kind of jokes, not street jokes, not long rambly jokes, just short 1 to 2 sentence jokes are very valuable, of course, in stand-up, because that's literally the job, but also in sales. That structure can be applied to an opener with a prospect. Yeah, get their attention, to demonstrate relevance, and to elicit an emotional reaction that gets them talking.
You make it sound so simple, and it's interesting in terms of, if I reflect on what I'm doing at the moment and kind of world of social media in terms of how you write, in terms of copy, it's kind of the same thing. You're trying to write copy that's going to create an emotional reaction to that short form piece of content, to then want to engage in the longer form of content. It is no different, I guess. Just with writing, you have more time to think about it, whereas when you're talking, and if I think back to my days of cold calling, and yes, I've never heard of you, I've heard of Michael Page International, you're the X number of recruitment consultant that's called me because, yes, we're advertising for this job. How do you stand out from the masses? So what are some of the things what is that structure that anybody listening to this would need to start to think about, as how you craft that message that is both relevant, memorable, but not the same as everyone else. And I do see, you've probably seen this on social, and some of the groups we're in as well, is that everybody starts using the same disruptor pattern, and it's no longer a disruptor pattern, isn't it? Because everyone's using the same thing. So how do you, where's the balance on that? How do you go about getting people to think, how do I do this that is going to work and is relevant? I'll shut up now because that was a really bad way to ask a question.
No, it's fine. And actually, you just triggered me when you referenced the fact that everyone that we see on LinkedIn is looking for some attention hack.
Yep.
They don't want to put in the work. They want something that's temporary, that they think is a pattern interrupt, but ultimately becomes the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone is doing it. I mean, there's certain cold call scripts that everyone thinks, yeah, listen, if something works for you, great. But at the same time, if everyone's doing it, like you're not standing out.
Nice.
So and you alluded to something else. The first step is the fact that you need to set some time to prepare and as I call it, gather raw materials which you're going to use to craft or sculpt your message.
Mm-hmm.
The first step in that is understanding who is my audience, who is my buyer, what are they trying to achieve, what are the classic roadblocks in their way, which roadblocks can I remove for them, what are the impacts of not removing those roadblocks,
mm-hmm.
and how do those roadblocks and the impacts of not removing them trigger which emotions for a buyer.
Yeah.
So do they get scared? Are they just frustrated with something? Do they absolutely detest something? Is and then we look at what is their desired end state, where are they trying to get to, and what were they going to love, want, and need on route to that desired state. So if we can capture all that information and then talk about what is our relevance to all that stuff we just said about our buyer, how can we help them get to their desired end state? Which roadblocks can we remove for them? This is the first step in really crafting something that can resonate with our buyers. We don't even have to try to be funny at first. We just have to get the truth down on paper. Yeah. And why should our buyer care about us?
Okay, that logic makes sense. That also, it is interesting in terms of that understanding the, what are the roadblocks we can help with? What are the buyer pains? How is this all relevant? Is this a training thing? Is this because some of the SDRs come in and just straight out of college and through no fault of their own, they don't have life experience like you and I, dare I say, we do. They don't even know what those are to even start that building blocks. And the same would apply to marketing teams trying to create marketing content and so on. So that all makes sense. But again, that you could be kind of any sales trainer, if I'm going to be blunt, that kind of says that. So where do we then bring in the Jon? Where do we bring in the nuance that makes you unique, if that's the word I'm looking for, to add that spin? I think that you've described it sometimes I've seen you describe it as roasting the pain of the kind of the person that you're selling to, which I kind of like that concept of the comedy roast, but it's the pain of the problem you're trying to solve. So how does one then, I guess you've done that basic kind of groundwork, the foundations that we've talked about. If you then want to take it to the next level, and I'm making an assumption here, you know what they say about assumptions, not everybody maybe can get to that point because they're just not funny or just not in them to do it, or they just not have the confidence to do it. But if you want to make that next step, how does one start to think about that?
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, actually, because I was rambling a little bit with my own answer, and you kind of steer me back on track. So thank you. I'll send you your check via PayPal. Can I send a check over PayPal? That was a terribly worded joke. You know what I mean. The money is in. Got to keep fumbling my own jokes.
It's not going wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But if we look at the concept of roasting your prospect's pain, it's ultimately telling a buyer what sucks about this problem that you're struggling with, which I can help you with, and painting a picture for them of where they could end up, or how they'll end up feeling, or a position they'll be in, or what could happen to the business or their customers or their employees if they don't solve this problem. So to be clear, I don't expect sales reps to write jokes out of the gate, no matter how simple and clear my process is. I always believe it's a collaborative process. And some people are more creative than others, and some people have more business knowledge than others.
Yeah.
And pooling that knowledge, insight, understanding, and observation is a very important step in the process. Look, good jokes, especially the simpler kinds, are predicated upon words and phrases. I don't mean puns. I don't teach puns.
Okay.
But at the same time, certain words and phrases can mean multiple things.
Yeah.
So we call this the double meanings. And I teach various joke structures. At the end of the day, most jokes that you hear in stand-up, or sometimes even on a sitcom or in sketch, they're pretty formulaic by nature. They're comparing one thing to something completely incongruent / different.
Yeah.
So my go-to opener for a long time is, hey Alex, this is Jon Selig. We've never spoken before, so this call will be a lot like a craft beer, unique, refreshing, and ice cold.
Okay. Yeah.
And lately I've been going, way deeper with the whole concept of cold.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are metaphorically cold out there. So, one that springs to mind is this call is colder than your SDR's reaction when you tell them less smiles, more dials.
And what I like about the way that you describe it is that you're building on and you're getting people to think about the person on the other end of the call, and it's words like painting a picture. How is that going to make them feel? It's tapping into that, because when you mentioned the cold beer, I visualize a cold beer, and that then triggers an emotion and a feeling. I'd love a cold beer right now, to be honest. Or the colder than the SDR's reaction to dial smiles and dials and so on. Again, I then get an image in my head that is unique to me, because each person is going to have that kind of that unique reaction to it. Yep. And that's why humor is so brilliant, but why humor is also unique to the individual in terms of how they interpret it. And then I guess it's then one has to be able to kind of react and be able to react pretty flexibly depending on what the response is going to be from that kind of opener that they're not used to. And you've got to be pretty nimble in terms of, I guess, your thinking and your thought processes, because that could elicit, I guess, multiple different responses versus a yes or a no, and unless you disagree otherwise.
Well, let me point out two things. So those jokes have different contexts. So the first one is, I'm not highlighting a problem except for the fact that it's a cold call in that first joke, the craft beer joke. However, if they laugh, it demonstrates my credibility as the comedy writing for sales teams guy.
Yep. The
second joke demonstrates my credibility that I understand a challenge you have as, let's say it's for an SDR leader.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, you're kind of maybe telling your reps to make more dials and they're not happy about it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's not fun, or they're not armed to make the calls. They don't feel confident about who your buyers are and the discussions that they should be having or that they need to be having with your buyers. But let's talk about, if we've done all that work that I mentioned up front, even if we don't write a great joke, or let's just say we write one great joke, if the buyer laughs and they say that's funny, that's so true, how can I help you? At that point, the ice has been broken.
Yeah.
They're laughing, confidence rises from the caller's perspective, and all that work that they've done en route to writing the joke has bolstered their knowledge and understanding of the problems they can help their buyers solve. And they should, at this point, if they have some other complementary sales training, know some good questions to ask. Because I don't claim to be this. My joke is, I'm not Medic, I'm not Challenger, and I'm not Sandler, but God, I wish I had his Netflix money. Thank you. I'm trying to help them boost their subject matter expertise and craft messaging that resonates, that triggers emotions, that demonstrates their credibility. And even if the buyer doesn't laugh, they've still put the problem that they could be struggling with right on the table.
Yeah.
And it segues to a discussion. So my take is that people are learning a lot about their buyers and the relevance to their buyers. not just, and also again, the impacts of not solving the problems. When I start my workshops, I say, well, what happens if they don't solve the problem? Oh, they're going to waste time and money. Well, every business challenge on the planet costs your buyers time and money. Please tell me how and why.
Yeah.
And become more subject matter expertise is the way I phrase it. So there's all these great benefits to writing jokes, and then the jokes themselves are the cherry on top of the gravy on top of the iceberg.
That makes sense. And I guess could this translate into kind of cold email outreach? Would the same kind of methods work in terms of you kind of roasting the pain, but you're crafting it in a way on in written format versus cold calling? And I'm now trying to think about what my headline should be on LinkedIn in terms of roasting the problem of the buyers in terms of, and this is what we can do to just give them a bit of a wry smile and rather than be the helping, the enabling, and this and that. And I try and experiment every kind of couple of months with the headline, just to kind of see the different reactions that I get. But is this transmissible, translatable? Can one translate this into kind of written format as well, do you think?
This is irony at its finest, because I just posted on this today on LinkedIn. So I don't know if you were peeking at my LinkedIn.
I haven't had a chance today, I'm afraid.
Okay, well that's just weird timing, but it's great timing. Look, I actually posted on the fact that I'll tell this joke and we'll see if it gets a laugh. We'll see if I can remember it. I'm setting myself up for failure. Using humor in cold email is kind of like ordering at a restaurant, ordering in English at a restaurant in China. It can lead to confusion, misunderstanding, and there's no General Tao's chicken.
Right.
And I went on to say in the post that, like, look, humor is obviously best delivered with our voices, because there's tone, there's a delivery to it, there's a cadence, there's a rhythm, and there's dynamics to our voice that lend to emphasis of certain words and phrases. Email and LinkedIn connection requests, you can still use humor, but you have to really vet the humor, maybe with some colleagues that aren't your friends, is what I suggested. Send it to them on email and say, does this joke work? Does this make sense? Does this get a laugh? Because there is no room for nuance or definitely sarcasm. That's the other thing. I certainly don't encourage sarcasm in email or even cold calls, to be quite honest, but it can work. It just needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully.
And as I'm now reflecting on that question that I asked you, and you're talking through, of course, because I advise the same thing to clients around how on social, whilst it sounds funny in your head when you're reading it just cold, black and white on text, you don't get the nuance, you don't get the tone, you don't get where it's coming from, and it can just be, well, that's just downright rude. I'm going to report you to your manager, or blow up on social and things go wrong where they were well intentioned at the start point, but it's just kind of fallen flat on its face. So thinking then to a different medium, starting to see now more video outreach in terms of video messaging to deliver that. Does one think that could translate into a short kind of 20 seconds, 10 seconds video clip introducing a joke? Or, and I'm leading an answer here, do we think we still face the similar challenge because it's still quite cold, if you will, rather than dynamic?
Let's come back to the principle of stand-up comedy, which is, if you go watch a comedy show, there's a very good chance you don't know any other comics on the show. There's only a handful of comics that most people know. So if you go to a random show at a club or a bar, it'll feature several comedians. I guarantee you haven't heard of most of them. You don't know them. When they walk on stage, you make some judgments about their physical appearance.
Yeah.
And at that point, they have to win you over within that first 12 seconds, like we talked about earlier. And they kind of need to do that a few times, so that if they're making you laugh 3 times in succession, at that point, you trust them that they're funny, and you're going to give them more attention for when they go into a longer story. So when you're delivering, when you're creating a video outreach, the principles are the same as cold email or cold calling. If you can start off with a joke, or at least make them laugh in the first 10 to 12 seconds, they're going to continue to pay attention. They're going to be like, okay, this person earned it. That was a moment of enjoyment in my day, and it's good prospecting, and I appreciate this. And I want to hear what they have to say. And of course, if you can make it more about them and the challenges they're struggling with, they're going to really want to listen. And I think you can use that tone of voice, that nuance, your body language in the humor on video in a way that you can't in a cold call. The only difference is obviously it's asynchronous. So it's one way. So there's, I hope I use that word correctly, because I just like saying asynchronous. I don't even...
I think it's correct. I think we will talk about asynchronous video messaging, and I was going, yes, I know what you're talking about.
Good. So in short, you don't get that reaction, that immediate reaction of someone laughing on a cold call, which feels great when they laugh on a cold call. I actually called I cold called someone recently, and I hit them up with a joke, and they laughed, and it just feels so good when you hit that bullseye and it's relevant to them. And so in short, you can totally use humor in video outreach. It's an advantage in video outreach. Just you miss out on that joy of getting that immediate response.
And there's a chap called Tom Boston based in the UK. He's part of Sales Loft, and he has the advantages. He used to be a radio DJ in Nottingham or somewhere, so is experienced in terms of media production, and quality media production. And his videos out there are hilarious, either in roasting himself or even roasting Sales Loft to a certain extent. But he's just had his role changed to social sales evangelist and moved into marketing, because they've got an absolute gem there in terms of just creating that community around him and drawing people to the brand that is Sales Loft around one person, which I guess also could be true around skills within. That was a weird thing in terms of my virtual background just then.
Wait, is your home not consist of a poster that says "Death of a Salesman"?
I walk around with this all the time. This is my wallpaper. My wife loves it, especially with Jon Selig all over the wall.
She's like, where has our marriage gone wrong?
Is that in your experience, are there individuals who just absolutely get this, and others they try and they just default back to what they're comfortable with, and that's totally fine, right? If you get it and you run with it, it works. But if it's not for you, a bit like me with kind of social, a bit like you kind of saying that sales wasn't for you, that's okay, right? That's not a negative reflection on you as a human being if you don't want to be in sales. So I guess it's just for the audience listening, if they're thinking about wanting to give this a go, obviously reach out to Jon for help on that, but don't be disheartened if it transpires that's just not how your brain is wired, I guess is the point I'm trying to get to.
Well, look, something I don't claim is that I make people funny. I help make them marginally funnier, even if it's just them learning to deliver one joke repeatedly with precision and timing that their buyers love. And I divide humanity into three categories. There's a very small percentage of people who are quote unquote naturally funny, and that's not even a thing. No one's naturally funny. We're all born with zero sense of humor. Our ability to be funny off the cuff and witty and clever and the life of the party it comes as a result of our life experiences, who our family is, who we grew up with, who our friends are, and of course our emotional intelligence and our IQ and all this stuff that can never be controlled. If we look at the bell curve of humanity, the vast majority of people lie in the middle. They have a sense of humor. They know how to laugh at a joke. They have laughed at a joke. They've said something funny off the top of their head. They've thought of something funny, but they appreciate humor. And therefore, I believe the vast majority of humanity can be trained to deliver one joke repeatedly with timing, not be funny all the time, not know what to say in the moment, not do stand-up, but just one joke for a particular audience. And then there is a very small percentage of people who can never make anyone laugh. These are sociopaths, or as I like to call them, procurement people. Hopefully no procurement people are listening. Some of them are quite nice. But some people it doesn't work for some people, I guess is the point. They don't feel comfortable. It's not natural. And that's okay. I don't claim that everyone should use this. I do feel that out of a sales team of 100, I feel in any given team, there's 10 to 30 people who are like, this is great. I'm going to use this. And if they can use it to improve their game with jokes themselves, great. For everyone else, like I said, the journey of writing the jokes helps them better understand their buyer and their relevance to the buyer, and makes them more conversational, consultative, subject matter expertise.
And I think that's if I reflect back on my time in my cold calling days, is that you are talking to a human being on the other side of the phone, just like you or I. So, back to your point around the bell curve of humor, they're likely to fall into the bucket. They find things funny. They have watched comedy shows. They have, they know how to react to humor, but you may have just got them on a bad time, on a bad day. They may have, like just me, had a lovely personal tax bill that's just come through the post from HMRC going, we know you left your loan last year during COVID, but now we're going to really screw you in the ass to get the money out of you that you owe. It's like, yay me, thank you very much. So if somebody, opens the joke, I might actually react to it. What if I don't react to it? Again, it's not necessarily a reflection on them as a human being or even the joke. It's just maybe bad timing, wrong time. Call them back in 3 months' time and you might be pleasantly surprised. And that was the thing for me, is that it was never, I never took it. I initially did. And then I got to the point, I'm not taking this personally. There's just no point taking it personally. Life's too short. Just move on. And I think that, and again, separate kind of conversation, I guess, but that probably comes down to life experience a little bit, versus the confidence of somebody who's just been kind of let loose onto, right, you want to make how many dials through your auto dialer and so on. If you're not getting the connection, you're just being told to F off every other call, it can be, I guess, pretty demoralizing. And maybe you should then go and look at one of your shows on YouTube, and that will make you take you out of that funk and make you happy again. I'm going to put you on the, no, I'm not going to put you on the spot. No, I'm going to put you on the spot, but not right now. Any of your clients or any of the individuals that you've worked with, no need to call them out by name, but you've given us two kind of examples that you've come up with yourself, but any of your students who come up with some absolute crackers that stand out in your mind in terms of an opener?
So they're jokes themselves?
Or openers or jokes themselves, either or.
Oh, okay. Yeah. These guys, it's a bit of a convoluted business so the jokes that come out of my workshops.
Yeah.
There's this expression, it's not funny if you have to explain it. In my world, if you don't explain it, it's not funny. Like, so
yeah,
the exact opposite. So I worked with this company. I worked with Canon. Let's go with this one. I worked with Canon and their managed services team.
Yeah.
And large organizations hate dealing with print.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to own it. It's like the COO doesn't want to own it. The CIO doesn't want to own it. It's like the ugly redheaded stepchild of operations at all companies. So Canon's basically like, look, we'll take care of your device management, your toner updates, your paper, your network updates, the security software. They do everything associated with print. So the joke that one of their people wrote, or one of the groups wrote, was that closet full of toner could be good inventory management or a sign of a hoarding disorder.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
And then the other one that kind of there's a couple more that stand out, but one I love is I worked with a company called EventMobi,
mm-hmm.
and they do apps for conferences.
Yeah.
And the challenge is that if you're planning a large conference before a global pandemic, of course,
yeah.
you have to print off agendas. You also have to worry about disposing them after everyone leaves them lying around
the
conference hall. So the joke these guys wrote is, the biggest challenge about printing programs for your conference is finding a big enough recycling bin to put them in.
Yeah, can see how that works, and then straight away, yeah, because you big recycling bin, lots of paper, you can see the image in your head, and then off you go on the on the conversation. I like it. And then before I let you go, John, because I'm conscious of all of our time here, but yours more importantly than mine, what's your go-to joke or your favorite kind of line that you deliver in terms of your stand-up comedy, if you have it, if there is such one?
In terms of my stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
For years, it's not my favorite, but it's been the most effective joke over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Is people, like I said, audiences make judgments about how we look. So I say, everyone, yes, I am an actor. I was Bert on Sesame Street. And then I got the role of Ross and Monica's dad on Friends.
I'm glad you went down that route, because that's who I see in terms of who you look like. So anybody watching this on YouTube, you can obviously see, forgive me, Ross's dad here, but those of you who are listening, go to YouTube or go to John's profile picture for you doesn't give it justice, but yeah, that's.
I've been using it for years, and I don't. if you were to see me do stand up, and if I go back to stand up, I'm not sure if I am, to be honest. After this pandemic, there's been something nice about not being around comedy clubs and colleagues, shall we say. It's a weird world. I'm sort of like too dysfunctional to work for someone's sales team, but I'm way too functional for the world of stand-up. And so I do what I do. But if you catch me doing stand-up in the future, I probably won't use that joke. If I do virtual, I will. Yeah. I've done a lot of Zoom, and I use that joke because I lean on it. But when I'm doing comedy in front of crowds, I haven't been doing that joke for, I don't know, a couple of years in front of live audiences. But when over this pandemic, I did a ton of Zoom comedy. I really leaned on that joke. It got people on my side within seconds.
Yeah.
And absolutely. It works over and over.
Awesome. Jon, this has been brilliant. I do look forward to interviewing all my guests, but I've been particularly looking forward to this one this week, just because I knew it would make me smile and laugh. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about how you may be able to help them with their sales teams and everything we've talked about?
There's two spots. There's jonselig.com. The H in Jon is both silent and invisible. In other words, jonselig.com. I encourage people to sign up for my email list. I send out lessons that sales pros can learn from truly terrible stand-up comedians, the kinds who never get out of the open mic circuit. There's a lot of valuable learning there. Also, just LinkedIn. Just find me on LinkedIn. I post all that stuff there too.
Perfect. I'll put all the links in the. I'm doing my YouTube thing. I never know which one I'm supposed to look. And if you're listening, the links will be in the podcast, and I'll also put the links to your YouTube channel as well, so people can see some of your historical. God, just shut up, Alexander. Jon, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Likewise, it's a lot of fun, and thank you for having me. And happy selling.
Thank you.